This is for the record. Marker, Alpha 7. Time, 0400 hours local. I don't know who will find this. Maybe nobody. But I need to say this now, while I still remember the details clearly. I need you to know what happened down there. My name is Sergeant Marcus Thorne. My call sign was Rook. I was the team lead for Scout Element 4-7. We were the best recon unit working out of Forward Operating Base Ares. This mission happened 3 months ago, and I am the only one who came back. You need to know who I lost. There was Corporal Elena Reyes, Ghost. Tiny woman, sharp as a razor. She handled our comms, our mapping, everything technical. She was our eyes and ears. She could spot a thermal tripwire from 300 meters. I trusted her life more than my own rifle. And Private Alex Rodriguez, Cruz. He was our breacher, our point man. The muscle, the big smile, the one who was always ready to move. He was the anchor of the team. We were tight. We were family. We were ready for anything a war zone could throw at us. We just weren't ready for that. The objective was deep in a remote mountain range, coordinates 34.11 north, 68.45 east. We were told to look for a standard, abandoned Soviet geological facility, a bunker complex sealed since 1991. The paperwork said we were retrieving a hardened data drive, something they missed during the collapse. That was the official lie the brass swallowed. The real intel came from Dr. Elias Vance. They made us drag him along. He was an archaeologist and geologist, pale and twitchy, looking like he hadn't slept in a decade. But he was sharp. Vance told me the Soviets weren't drilling for oil. They were drilling into something old. Something Precambrian, maybe older than the mountains themselves. He swore the data drive was just a cover story. Find out what they ran from, Sergeant, he kept saying. He had seismograph reports. They showed a rhythmic, powerful activity deep below that structure. Not tectonic plates moving. Something else. He said it sounded like something was breathing. A structure that was alive. I didn't believe him, but I treated it like a high threat. We went in light, carrying explosives and climbing gear. We found the access point at 0300 hours. It wasn't a facility door. It was a dark, ugly scar on the mountain. The primary entrance was a massive, rusted steel Soviet hatch. Standard issue. It would have taken us an hour to cut through. But right next to it, partially hidden by rock slides, was another door. That's where the mission turned into a nightmare. This second door was solid black material. It looked like polished obsidian, but it was massive, thicker than any reinforced concrete. It was just wrong. Cruz put his hand near it. He said his proximity sensor was spiking cold, the door was radiating a negative thermal signature. Zero heat, Ghost confirmed. It felt like standing next to a black hole. Dr. Vance got hushed and his voice shook with excitement. He said the mineral composition was non-terrestrial, it wasn't from this planet. This isn't a geological facility, he insisted. This is a mausoleum, Sergeant. And that black door is the only way in. We tried a thermal lance. It barely melted the surface. We had to use an M84 charge on the hinges. We used a lot of plastic explosives, and the door didn't even bend, but the hinges finally failed. When the dust settled, the air that rushed out wasn't just stale or cold. It smelled like frozen iron. It was a metallic smell, like a fresh wound, but freezing cold. The moment we dropped 30 meters down the shaft, Ghost lost all comms. Everything went dead. No static, no hiss. Just silence. It was like dropping into a cage made of lead. We lost our connection to the base, to the world, to everything. We were running purely on hardwire helmet to helmet. Ghost said her geoscanner was going crazy, she thought the complex was actively shielded. We descended maybe 500 feet. It was a steep, narrow shaft, filled with a thick, swirling dust that never settled. Cruz kept looking around. He said the place was too clean, no rust, no dripping water. Too sterile for a bunker sealed for 3 decades. The temperature dropped steadily, near 10 degrees below freezing. It felt like the earth was trying to freeze us out. Then we hit the central complex. It wasn't a hallway. It was a cathedral. We stepped out into a colossal, circular chamber. The ceiling was too high to hit with our helmet lamps. Massive columns, like polished black bone, held up the roof. Ghost did a quick calculation. It was the size of a small stadium, deep inside the earth. The Russians didn't build this. They just broke into it. In that enormous silence, we heard it. The sound. The low-frequency thump. Thump. Slow, but powerful. Vance's breathing. When it hit, it didn't just sound loud, it vibrated in your chest. It felt like a heartbeat inside the ground. Vance was terrified but fascinated. He said the rhythm suggested something enormous, something biological that defied the laws of physics. It was everywhere, and it was alive. We followed the sound to the center of the chamber. We found a pedestal made of that same black, light-absorbing rock. And on it was the relic. It looked like a perfectly smooth, wet, football-sized stone. It had no sharp edges. It had no features. But it seemed to glow with an internal, dark light, and it was the source of the magnetic field killing our comms. Cruz suddenly stopped. He complained that the air was getting thick, humid, but cold. As he spoke, the relic started to change. The surface rippled like thick oil, and a single, perfect line of iridescent purple light pulsed out from the center, synchronized exactly with the thump. Thump, of the earth. That was enough. I gave the order, abort. Immediately. We were not equipped for this. The thump became frantic now, shaking the camera lens. We started a fast ascent. Reyes was leading the climb. I was right behind her. Cruz was covering our rear, maybe 10 feet down, watching the floor of the cathedral disappear in the swirling dust. Reyes was shouting, urging us on. Cruz reported hearing something below us, not the pulse, something different. I yelled at him to hurry up the rope. I looked down, but my lamp didn't cut through the churning dust. Then, the pulse stopped. Just like that. Instantly. The silence was deafening, worse than the sound. I realized the thump was covering everything else up. Then I heard it. A sound I'll never forget. ASHK sound. Wet. Like pulling a heavy sheet of thick, wet rubber off glass. A quick, desperate sound of cloth tearing, and then, nothing. No scream. No pain. I stopped climbing. I knew. He was 10 feet below me 1 second, and the next, there was only the smell of frozen iron, stronger than before. I pulled up the feed from his helmet cam. Static. But right before it went dark, I saw it. Just a brief flash. A texture. It looked like a patch of wet, black velvet that absorbed all light and stretched across the entire width of the shaft. Ghost was hysterical on the helmet wire, screaming Cruz's name. I couldn't answer her. I just climbed, pulling myself away from the darkness. We scrambled into a side maintenance room near the entrance level, dragging a half-catatonic Vance. We used everything we could find, heavy, broken containers, to barricade the blast door. I knew it wouldn't hold. Reyes was in shock, saying, it took him in a second. What the hell was that texture? Then, the breathing started again. It wasn't the slow, deep pulse from the chamber. It was fast. It was shallow. It was a loud, wet, ragged hiss-inhale. Hiss-exhale. It sounded huge, and it was right outside the door. Vance started muttering that the thing was the custodian, that it knew we had the relic. Not a geological structure. He kept whispering, looking at the ceiling. It's a lung. We're in its lung. Then the whispers began. They came from the door itself. From the vents. From the concrete floor. Faint, overlapping whispers. They were in at least 3 different, non-Latin languages, guttural clicks and long, drawn-out vowels. Ghost was crying, saying she didn't understand them. I told her to stop listening. They weren't speaking to us. They were speaking to each other. A chorus of ancient voices that had been waiting down there since the planet was forming. They were planning. They were hungry. And they knew we were just soft, warm meat that had broken their seal. The hiss and hail was deafening now. The blast door shuddered violently. I knew we had seconds. I threw the relic to Reyes. She had the only functional pack left. I ordered her to run, to climb out, and to bury the stone. Then I turned to the door and emptied a 60-round drum from my rifle into the center lock, hoping to jam the mechanism for a few extra moments. She fought me. She wailed. But I screamed at her, go. That thing doesn't want us dead, Ghost. It wants to know how we got the lock open. We're just data points to it. Now get out. Reyes scrambled into a low ventilation duct. I watched her disappear, then turned back to the door. The sound of rending metal started. The door didn't just bend. It liquefied. That black velvet texture seeped through the cracks. It was fast. Too fast. It flowed into the room like a curtain of black water. I fired another panicked burst. I don't know what I hit, but it recoiled with a sickening, high-pitched squeal and a wet, explosive ripping sound. I had a 2-second window. I grabbed the spare pack and reversed out the vent after Reyes. I didn't find her. I made it to the surface access point, the black obsidian door. The one we blew open with C4. SGT, Thorne's voice drops to a whisper, his gaze distant. It was closed. It was sealed from the inside. There were no wires, no hydraulics. Just the polished black rock, perfectly smooth. Not even a seam. It hit me then, standing in the dark. Whatever was in that bunker, it wasn't trapped. The Russians weren't keeping it in. They were keeping us out. We were the intruders. I walked 5 days through the mountains carrying this thing. I still have the relic. It's what keeps me warm at night. It's what lets me hear the breathing. And it's getting closer.